Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. As I move this motion under Standing Order 17 to discuss a matter of urgent public importance, namely the national emergency due to the disastrous oil spill along the coastline of Tobago. Madam Speaker, in 1979, Trinidad and Tobago experienced one of the world's largest ever oil spill or tanker spill in our waters after two tankers collided and discharged approximately 287,000 tons of crude oil. And in 2024, oil or some oil-like substance is spewing in Tobago's waters, and we must take note of the commentary or the concerns of the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, namely Chief Secretary Fali Agustin. And I quote him when he said, "Tobago was never, ever ready for this kind of spill. You are talking about an island that does not have sufficient amount of booms, an island that doesn't have storage, adequate storage capacity for this kind of oil or for toxic material. We never prepared for this as an eventuality." And, Madam Speaker, the facts are very clear. It has been established that on the 7th of February, 2024, a mystery vessel began leaking oil-like substance on a reef off the coast of Tobago, namely in the vicinity of the Couva Eco and Industrial Business Park. And the Prime Minister, the member for Diego Martin West, today in this very said house, in this very said chamber, stated, and I quote, that the nature of the oil spill and the immediacy of the need for a coordinated approach in containing and, where possible, reversing the effects of the spill led me to declare a national emergency. On Sunday, the 11th of February, 2024, 4 days after the oil-like substance began spewing from this vessel. It is important to take note that this occurred 4 days. And the resulting spill, based on information coming out of the Tobago Emergency Management Agency, TEMA, has indicated that the spill is in the vicinity of approximately 144 kilometers in length and growing, and now is threatening the shores or the shoreline or the coastline of our neighbors, such as Venezuela and Grenada. And there's a sense of anxiety, apprehension, concern within the population of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker, because when citizens continue and stakeholders continue to rely on the national newspapers, we have been greeted with headlines such as "Tobago oil mystery deepens, tugboat vanishes." Fisherfolk warn of increase in Tobago fish prices after oil spill. IMA warns against selling, eating toxic fish, dead animals found at sites affected by oil spill. And also, a headline, whether there are any facts, cover-up, Fali accuses government of hiding info on oil spill. Oil's threat widened, Grenada on alert for possible Tobago oil spill fallout, and Venezuela ready to offer support if needed. Madam Speaker, it is also important to note that this particular spill has gained the attention of the international press. The major news networks have carried this spill to the point that BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, has reported on it, its existence and its possible implications for the economy of Tobago and so on. And I was taken aback when one of the international correspondents at CNN, one Max Foster, lamented, and I quote, "The government does not know who owns the vessel, where it came from, or what's even in it." This is the international press coverage that we have been exposed to as a result of this scenario that has unfolded since the 7th of February 2024, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, we are on the verge of 10 days into this disaster. And having listened to the member for Diego Martin West, and with all due respect to the office of the Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, we are no better informed when the Prime Minister made his statement in this Honorable House, and there is no light at the end of the tunnel. All I can say is that God help the people of Tobago based on the current intervention of the central government of Trinidad and Tobago. But, Madam Speaker, we on this side, we want to take the opportunity to express our sincere thanks and appreciation and commendation to all stakeholders and volunteers who have been involved in the cleanup operation or the salvage operations at this point in time. Because it is very clear that the fisher folk or the fishermen from Scarborough, from Lambo, from Bucco, Blackrock, Mount Irving, Plymouth, amongst other areas, have been impacted upon in terms of their ability to ply their trade and to earn revenue streams or an income. And from a geographical point of view, the Scarborough waterfront, lowlands in and around the Magdalena Beach and Gulf Resort, and I could go on and on in terms of the areas that have been impacted. And it is also important, Madam Speaker, I see the members for Tobago West and Tobago East smiling broadly, but for some reason there have been deafening silence coming from Tobago East and Tobago West as it relates to what has transpired in their geographic domain, if I should use that particular phrase. I thought they would have been first out of the starting blocks. And being part of the volunteer system or the cadre of volunteers to render assistance to the people of Tobago in their hour and in their plight of need, Madam Speaker. But more importantly, too, we must focus on where we are, because the mangroves have been impacted, and they are important from an environmental point of view, and they are important, the mangroves, from the point of view of the assets of Tobago's tourism trust and current existence, and so on, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, the opposition has seen the need to bring this motion to this House, and based on your blessings and approval, because there are a number of questions that the government of Trinidad and Tobago has to answer. Because at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, they must not hide under the cloak or under the veil of the Tobago House of Assembly. The central government of this country has a fundamental responsibility to preserve the unitary state of Trinidad and Tobago, and in the preservation of the unitary state of Trinidad and Tobago, it must take charge and leadership whenever there is a crisis of national proportion, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I have been hearing pronouncements that the spill is being contained and the spill is being properly managed. But Madam Speaker, I am a logical thinking man. And if my memory serves me correct this afternoon, the member for Port Bay North, St. Anne's West, the Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs, told my colleague, the Chief Whip, the member for Pointe-à-Pierre, that oil is still leaking from the vessel. The vessel has not been plugged. So if you are unable to plug the leak, how could you tell me that the oil spill is being contained and it is being managed, Madam Speaker? That defies logic. And in another place, I would have used the appropriate language. But I cannot use the appropriate language in this August chamber, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, the country has had an official national oil spill and contingency plan since 2013. And it was passed by the government led by the member for Siparia, Madam Speaker. It speaks of our progressive and visionary thinking in terms of how we handle the affairs of leading a government in the context of our responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And Madam Speaker, the reaction in the first few hours determines the success of any containment efforts. And probably in his response, if he's inclined to join the debate, the Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs, must tell us through his ministry and tell the population through leadership of his ministry how quickly did this national oil spill contingency plan, how quickly was it activated, and when did this occur, and who was in charge of the incident command team and so on, Madam Speaker, because this is effective communication not only with the people of Tobago, but the entire population of the unitary state of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker. And in addition to that, to this particular issue, Madam Speaker, the government is duty-bound to tell us, because there's a sense of anxiety, there's a concern, even fear to a lesser extent, because the government, I think the Minister of National Security, I do not know where he is at this point in time, if he's involved in active discussions in trying to locate the owners and where this ship or vessel originated from, Madam Speaker. But the government is duty-bound to tell the population how long has this ghost or phantom vessel been in the waters of Trinidad and Tobago. And in addition to that, whether the ship, when did this vessel run into trouble, and whether it was abandoned by parties connected with it, Madam Speaker. These are the important things because, Madam Speaker, from a national security point of view, it is mind-boggling to know that a vessel could come into the waters of Trinidad and Tobago, and for some amazing or mind-boggling reasons, our intelligence system has failed, our radar system, our surveillance system, and we could go on and on in terms of where we are, Madam Speaker. And as I said, the statement of the Prime Minister in this very said House today did not give me any sense of comfort, and I'm sure it did not provide any sense of comfort to the entire population of Tobago, and they are no better off. And today, we want to tell the government of this country that there is the need for increased collaboration between the central government and the Tobago House of Assembly if we are to arrest this spill, if we are to salvage the economy of Tobago in the interest of our unitary state. And I say this because it has been established that the spill is beyond 144 kilometers and growing in length and its impact. And the government has said, and if I am to quote the Prime Minister very quickly, Madam Speaker, and I quote from his statement, the vessel is as of now still stuck on the reef at Couva, and it continues to pose a major threat as it continues to foul the coastline and surrounding areas. Our major task now is to empty the contents of the vessel in a control operation and neutralize the threat. We are assessing the scope of what is required and seeking the pertinent expertise where we do not have it. 10 days, you're still analyzing. 10 days, you're still the scope and what is being required and so on. Lift the disaster tier to level 3 or tier 3 and get the necessary expertise and competency to deal with the issue, because the oil continues to impact upon the coastline and the threat that it is impacting upon the economy and the environment of Tobago, Madam Speaker. So,
Honourable Member, you have 2 more minutes left of speaking time.
Yes, Madam Speaker. And in addition to that, we want to recommend to the government that under the 1992 Protocol of the International Convention on Civil Liability for Oil Pollution Damage, we want to hear from the government. They must tell us what are the mechanisms, what are the initiatives which will be pursued by the government to hold the owners liable for environmental damage to the Tobago maritime environment and coastline. And in addition to that, there must be a focused collaboration with the International Maritime Organization to find the origin and the owners of this particular vessel. And in addition to that, Madam Speaker, we want to recommend to the government, because the EMA and the IMA, they seem to have gone silent. They need to tell us. 10 days now, they cannot tell us what is in the waters and what is contained in this vessel, Madam Speaker. That speaks of some kind of, I do not want to say incompetence, but it speaks of procrastination. And I think that the line ministers need to step up to the plate and get these two institutions communicating with the stakeholders and the population of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, and on the issue of effective communication, the government must get on the ground with the fisher folk, the small businesses, the stakeholders who have been impacted upon by this unfortunate situation, to do the proper assessment so that when the time comes for compensation and to hold those that are liable, the cost implication for the ordinary people would have been costed already. I think